Good evening, everyone. As you're joining, just please check in and make sure that you are on mute, please. So we do have 32 registrants for this evening, and we're up to 15 right now. So we're going to give it a couple minutes and allow people to join. We're still 1 minute ahead of airtime. We'll probably give them 2-3 minutes into airtime before we start.
Michael, should I be seeing record lit up on my screen, which I am not?
I'm recording down to my hard drive.
Okay.
So I don't know if that displays differently.
Okay.
But recording is on.
Yeah, and I see recording is on.
Hey, Dr. Laurie, I just want to make sure I muted the panel, but you are still unmuted. Could you do me a sound check?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
You want it louder or is it fine? It's fine.
Nope. Perfect. Okay, we've got 18 people online. Join activity. Oh, there we go. I think we just got to 19. Yes, no, yeah, no, yes, no. All right, cool. We're at 19. So that is officially well past half of the number that registered. So we're going to kick this off, and I anticipate we'll see some people join in a couple minutes. So hi, my name is Michael O'Grady. I'm on the board of the library, and I'm on behalf of the library hosting the meeting for tonight. I want to remind everybody about good conference call etiquette, which is, I've muted you. Please don't unmute yourself. There is a chat function here. So if you take your mouse and you drag it down to the bottom of the Zoom screen, you'll see a menu bar come up, and should be the third icon in the middle is a little chat icon. I'm going to chat to you right now. And if you see hi there, then you found the chat icon. And that's where I would encourage you to post questions. We'll allow Dr. Laurie to go through her presentation, and then we'll go through we'll have a Q&A afterwards, which I will curate, or facilitate. Curate's not the right word, facilitate. So throw anything you want in there, and if we don't get to answering it tonight, I'll make sure that any non-duplicate questions get shared with Dr. Laurie, and you know, hopefully we can come up with an answer. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Janet Devriahu, who will introduce our speaker for the evening. Janet, give me a minute. I'm going to unmute you. All right, you're live, Janet.
Great. I'm Dr. Janet Michelson-Devriahu. I'm the head of the program committee of the board of the Bala-Cynwyd Library. We're delighted to have Dr. Laurie Leventhal-Belfer. She's a psychologist specializing in autism spectrum disorder and the author of 4 books, including the recently released College on the Autism Spectrum. Dr. Leventhal-Belfer, who is known as Dr. Laurie by her children, their parents, and sometimes her students, earned her BA in child development at Tufts University and her doctorate in clinical psychology from University of California at Berkeley. In addition to her writing, Dr. Laurie continues her work as a practicing psychologist and an adjunct lecturer at Stanford University. Early in her practice, Dr. Laurie began working with young people on the autism spectrum and their families. And during this time, she became a passionate advocate for taking a developmental approach to their care and to understanding the children and teens and the diverse ways they present to their parents, teachers, and professionals. This approach, which shapes therapy based on context gained from the child's family, school, and community, offers a more comprehensive approach to managing the challenges of autism spectrum disorder. As her patients began entering college, their needs and concerns changed. At the urging of many of these patients and their families, Dr. Laurie wrote College on the Autism Spectrum. Just as an aside, this program comes to you under the sponsorship of the Bala-Cynwyd Library and the Lower Merion Library Association. We would love to continue programs such as this, and our programming depends on the support of the community. If you would like to financially support the Bala-Cynwyd Library and its programming, please go to the Bala-Cynwyd Library webpage and click on Donate Now. And now, without further ado, we have Dr. Laurie Leventhal-Belfer.
Thank you. I want to begin by thanking you, Michael and Janet, for inviting me to talk tonight. I'm excited about being here and to be able to share with you what I've learned from the families who have students on the autistic spectrum disorder and helping them in that process of preparing for college. My hope is to leave you with greater understanding of what lies ahead for both students and parents, and provide practical actions you can undertake to help your child overcome obstacles before they enter college. I'm sure many of you will have questions, and as Michael went over, along the way, jot them down, and I will be happy to answer all of them at the end. Thank you. Congratulations. First, let me start by congratulating you. If you're coming to this talk tonight, my guess is that you may be a parent of a child on the spectrum or have a good friend who has a child on the spectrum. You may be a teacher, a professor who works with these children, and you may be a clinician in the community. If you're a parent of a student with autism spectrum disorder preparing for college, you have undoubtedly worked very hard and been on top of an advocate for your child along the way. You have gotten to know them, you've been able to see their strengths and challenges and how to really represent them to make sure they get the type of education, they get the type of services they need, so they are better prepared for college. And colleges and universities are increasingly aware, as well as work sites, supportive of these students' needs. But as you may have guessed, not all universities and colleges are as prepared. What are the new challenges? I want to begin with this picture, which of course it was designed before COVID-19. You're not going to find any place in campus where kids are this close together without wearing masks and going through and checking into what clubs and activities they wish to participate in. Many of you, like myself, are involved with universities where there's been changes week by week about who's having students on campus or off campus or online. So this was an ideal time, and hopefully we'll get back to it soon. But back to the priorities. Not all colleges understand autistic spectrum disorder because these students are unique, and we'll be going over that with you in this talk, is that your students probably are doing well academically enough to apply to colleges. And no college can ask any information about your child until they are accepted. So finding the right university fit is a challenge for all parents, not just students on the spectrum, but many of my clients who may have anxiety, depression, or learning differences. Preparing your child for that transition from having things done for them, for helping them learn they are going to be the ones in charge, and supporting them from afar. I remember the days of college where there was one telephone in one room with 4 girls and having to take set times that we were going to be able to talk. The challenge today, every university tells parents, please don't text between every class. Please do not be involved in their work, and let us take on that role. My background, I think you went over it lovely, Janet. Thank you very much. I am a psychologist, an adjunct lecturer at Stanford, and I'm passionate about a systems approach to understanding and supporting kids. This has been an approach that I started in my work at Tufts, took it to Chicago, and then basically every paper I've written is included. I stay connected with these parents, and in a systems approach, you cannot look at a child or an adult in isolation. You look at them in their relationships, which we'll be going over later. I've worked with parents at times of success, when there's been roadblocks, as their kids grew up and started going to college and began their own families. We'll be doing some clinical vignettes of some of the stories that are written in more depth in my book. I'm the author of 4 books, including College on the Autism Spectrum, and the founder of the Friends program. This is Dr. Laurie's favorite picture. So those of you who know me, I began at Elliott Pearson School of Child Development at Tufts, playing on the ground with kids. And then I observed kids in many different settings. I worked on the oncology unit. I've worked with preemies. And what I could tell is nothing like enjoying play and having them interested in what's going on around them. And the challenge for some of the kids are more interested in the object they're holding and not necessarily who they're playing with or connecting with who they're playing with. As I said earlier, when I give a talk, I take a systems approach. And in that systems approach, we look at not the child strictly in isolation, but we look at them along many different dimensions, and we know we can't get them all. If it's applied to college students, it takes into consideration the student's family, their ethnicity, cultural, economic status, and then pivotal relationships with classmates, professors, teaching assistants, resident advisors. On top of this, it looks at the student's network of friends. Who do they view as having friends? Who are their friends? Do they see these friends? Are they people online that they don't really know? Are there people in chats that they don't see regularly? And that's what I found is really important for all students, to have a mentor and a friend on campus. College is an emotional challenge for all students, that we go up and down along the way. And as with this cartoon, it shows here is the emotional roller coaster your teen will be on, It may be for 5 minutes, it could be for an hour, and it could be for a week. And I think you all know, who know your kids know, this is something rather common that happens at home when something unpredictable comes up. And what we try to help empower those students with coping capacities so they can get back on that roller coaster and back onto the next challenge they have. College support and diagnosis. What's important for you to remember was when you apply, when your student applies to college, the colleges are not allowed to ask any information about disabilities. And the high school, where they may have an individual education plan, may not disclose any information. It will be all on the young adult going to college's shoulders, their responsibility to share the diagnosis and to seek services. In my 30 years of working with this population, I have seen a roller coaster of feelings about disclosing a diagnosis to this child, parents not letting them know until they may be in high school, resentment for the diagnosis not to be shared, and resistance to students wanting to share it at college. As many of my clients said, I was bullied in middle school. No one believed me when I shared them when I went to high school, and I want a fresh start in college, which means I don't want disability services. So as much preparation as you can do to help them see how it can be an asset, not a burden, will be to both of you advantage. Steve's story, and I want to let you know the names of clients that I use have all been changed, and I have their permission to use the names that I'm using in my talk today and that I use in the book. Steve was a boy who was in my program when we was a preschooler. We played games together. I remember seeing him, and he would have the dinosaurs. I tried to get them to have a conversation. He'd say, Dr. Laurie, we can't talk because I am a herbivore and you're a carnivore. I did not know the differences of different types of dinosaurs. He also was someone who easily got overwhelmed and would go under a table to disclose and to hide himself because there's too much social, emotional sound going on around him. And he needed to have a safe space. And his mother, who also participated in this book, and in my earlier book on Asperger's and young children, she said, my job as a parent is to build a bridge, to help Steve to find a place where he can feel comfortable and safe, and to make sure I get him to cross that bridge so that he can blossom in school and in college. And I have a positive note to say he is also a librarian right now. Welcome to college, understanding your new role. We may remember what it was like the first day of school when the kids did not want to go. I remember my daughter crying. And then the first day of college when they do not want to be seen with you. And that is a transition for us to go through as parents, that we want to help them with their autonomy and to be independent, but we also have to work on our own ability to say goodbye. In every college you go to, there'll be a set time when they'd say, we're going to have wine and cheese, or the kids are going to meet with the resident advisors and faculty advisors and would like you to say goodbye beforehand. And we know there always will be a parent close by, hoping that they'll be able to have dinner with them later in the day, or going quickly to the car so they can cry on the ride home. Another issue with welcoming to college, understanding your new role. Meet your adult child and respect your adult child. When they go to college and they're 18, the new roles belong with HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. One of the most difficult things for parents to realize is once they are 18, you cannot call their teachers, you cannot call mental health services, and you cannot call disability services. It is all up to your student, who is an adult. Privacy is something that universities care a great deal about. They don't want to be sued. And as my book, I talk about there are some exceptions only if there's grave concerns about academic issues. The long distance challenges, even if your child is going to a school that's only 50 minutes away, you're not able to look over the shoulder like you can now, especially when everyone is working from home, and see if they're doing their work or if they're playing games or if they're not engaged at all into their classroom work. When they're at college, you will not know any of that. The teachers are not going to contact you. Helping your student understand their needs. There's many components of this. I'm going to begin with executive functioning. What's the day-to-day planning? Do they get up on their own? Do they get up in time to get to classes? Do they know basic things that need to go to be dressed for classes? And how about having breakfast beforehand? And do they have the materials they need? Is their computer set up to launch on and to join a class, to take notes, and also to keep track of what their responsibilities are? How are they in communications? If they're concerned, will they go to their resident advisor? Will they talk to their teacher for support? Every teacher has open hours, but that doesn't mean everybody goes to them. Do they going to ask their roommate for help? So how do they manage those communications when you're not going to be able to call, excuse me, call the school or call the teacher and say, can we talk? They'll say no. Life management. How are they with daily living skills? Do they know how to get their laundry done? How about managing their food? When you go to college, there's dinners at set time. They're not in their rooms playing games, forgetting dinner and knowing that mom will always have something later for them. How about grooming? Understanding they're going to be in showers they're shared with, bathrooms shared with other people, and making appointments on their time. Last but not least, mental health issues. Research is growing, and day to day we find the numbers. Depression, anxiety, and ADHD are the 3 most common diagnoses that are seen on today's campuses, and especially so during COVID-19. Now, these are also key diagnoses that are very common in comorbidity for students on the autistic spectrum disorder. So many of my clients may have sought help under these diagnoses rather than sharing ASD. College support checklist. There's a lot of things here, and we're going to go through some of them. Some you'll be familiar with, and we can talk about along the way. Just to think about now, how much support is your student getting currently? With a tutor? Are they seeing a therapist? Who manages their own schedule? Who knows when their exams are due, when papers are due? How involved are you, parents, with these daily demands? Who manages their medication? Can they do that on their own, or do you put it out for them at night? How about cooking or cleaning? Do they depend on you? Do they know how to cook? And last but not least, managing money. Have you begun to help them how to write a check? Or if they have a credit card, how to make sure how much is in their account? And do you currently help them in daily living? Drive them to school, provide deadline reminders, and also communicate on their behalf. Those are things you will not be able to do once they're in college. The importance of ongoing communication. This is a student who is participated in my book and also talked about the pivotal role his relationship with his father played. He called his dad and said, "Dad, I'm thinking of committing suicide, but I know that's wrong. I put everything away, but it's been really hard for me getting used to college." The challenge is he had such high expectations for himself. He ran for political position on campus. He wanted to join clubs, but he missed the deadline. So his glowing outline of what he wanted to accomplish the first semester or first quarter of the school didn't work. And then he felt like that roller coaster, like it was doomed. Luckily, he put the stuff away. He called his dad, and luckily his dad lived 50 minutes away, could stop work, got in the car, and said, "We're going to have coffee." Him and his father met every 2 weeks, often to have coffee and go for a walk. And on their walk, his father said, "Remember, when you were younger, you felt this way at times when you're building something in Legos and it got knocked down. Or if you had a science project and it found that it was a null result, and you made it through." Well, college is the same way. And I want you to go back. I want you to take a deep breath, look at the beautiful sky, and remember, one block at a time. Your whole future is not going to be planned at your first month of school. And I'm proud to say that he is a graduate student now. Before going to college, just as it's important to know about academic needs, it's important to know about the social and emotional preparation we all must go through in helping our child be aware of what their needs are and to become advocates. How do they manage stress? How do you manage stress? How do they handle loneliness? Or do they prefer to be online rather than being with peers? Are they experiencing anxiety? And if so, what sets it off? And have they been diagnosed with depression? And are they seeing a therapist or are on the medication? How do they work in socializing and making friends? Are they natural in that? Do they make friends with people they don't really know? Do they prefer having friends online, on Facebook, on Instagram? Or are these really genuine friends who they get together with? How have they handled bullying? And many times they don't realize they're being bullied. And at other times they think it's a compliment, what the other people are saying to them. And many times it's very painful. And it's usually that was when a peer said, "They're not complimenting you. They're saying, get out of here," and insulting you. The value of different perspectives. Today's universities work very hard to provide diverse perspectives on the curriculum. And it's important that you help expose your child before they go to college to different community, different lifestyles, different political positions than maybe what your family holds. Because many students, when they get to college, make very fast judgments about their roommate. And that can impact their ability to develop a really crucial relationship, as well as their view of teachers and classes and their classmates. Every college that I know of now, when you go, will provide continuing education almost, or a course they must take about risky behavior, drinking, drugs, and sex. And most important, I think, for you, and they still have to take that, is that you begin talking about this with them in casual, short conversations, not lectures. Nobody wants to hear lectures. Short conversations before they go to college. And most important, when they are in college and young adults or at the work site, they have to practice self-advocacy because you can't make that phone call for them. So they need to stand up in junior high school, when they're in middle school, when they're a junior in high school, and when they're a senior. That's pivotal time to stand up and say, "I'm confused with what you just said. Can we go over what is telling you?" They're not processing the information that they're getting. Mental health disorders associated with autism disorder. We're not going to go through all of these, and I think you have experience, and my book does describe them more in detail. But many of the students who we see now and have been diagnosed as adolescents were initially diagnosed as ADHD. Some who still have that as a primary diagnosis, but many have comorbidity. Anxiety is another common one for these kids. I'm not sure I'll like this person. They look different than me, and I don't know how to handle the social world outside there. Depression and suicidal ideation and most recent research on this topic is coming up. And many of you may know firsthand, many of the kids can say things that are very scary. And what that means, it's a hard day, and I'm frustrated, and I don't like what's going on. As well as you can have areas of special interest, and when is it obsessive compulsive? Just like Steve, he could have his books in perfect order, but as far as knowing when course requirements were due, he had a harder time. Sometimes we see tics, and rarely, but sometimes we do see schizophrenia. And the concern for us is how often these kids are quoting things they learned on YouTube or videos and making it as being part of themselves. Getting support for disability services, I think after you're accepted is really important. And I've learned from my clients how painful and difficult that can be. Having an individual education plan can help, but it is no guarantee. So if they have that IEP now, they can take it and share it with the people at the university, and at least they have a background so they're not starting new. Students, though, always, I want you to remember, they have the full responsibility for initiating and following through with academic and mental health services. Most of the parents who I interviewed for this book are those whose children did not offer to participate because of the difficulties they had, all had things lined up for them, all made effort to see, are there people on campus that can help my child? But that doesn't help unless they take the first step. Similarly, I get called all the time. I've got my brothers at Stanford, or another person is at Santa Clara, or I've got a child. Could you see them, Dr. Laurie? And I have to say, I only can see them if they call me. You cannot set up an appointment for your adult child. How you can foster your child's transition. Acknowledge your new role. You're there to be an advocate. You're there to be supportive, but you're not there to be their primary caregiver. And you're not there to be their facilitator of roadblocks that go along the way at school. This is your opportunity to foster their independence before they go to college. Have experiences. It's safe to do the wash and mix the red and white at home. It's more embarrassing when it happens in college. Find a communication style that works. As I said, no one wants to be lectured. And many of my clients say, I'm not even going to talk about how I feel because I know that's going to make my mom or my dad more anxious. Accept that their goals may differ from yours. And that is one of the things most important, I think, for all of us today. The goals that we may thought for them or for ourselves may be very different than their goals. And I think those of us with adult kids are pleasantly surprised as they found their own path along the way. And it can be very different than what we thought when they were 5 or 7 years old. So be open to finding the right college, be open to finding what they find to be helpful and avenues for their learning and mentors along the way. Finding the right fit. This is a story about a little girl, Steve's younger sister, who also participated in a Friends program. And I myself am a dancer, so I could identify with her very much. I saw her in the first setting where we did our therapeutic groups, and she'd walk back and forth and go step and dip, plie and releve, over and over on this little square that was set up by occupational therapists to help with balance. The hard part was getting her to sit at a table with other children and participate in that activity. But I used to we're doing a stretch, and then we're going to come sit down with the group, which worked. I got calls from her mom along the way because of her older brother, her, and things going on in the family. And as college approached and she was a senior in high school, she said, Mom, I don't think I'm ready. Her grandmother very much wanted her to be a nurse, and she was not ready to live independently. So Mom said, let's slow down. She lived at home, she got to continue with dance, and mom made sure she had a paid job so she could start to live some of those components of independent living. Lo and behold, a surprise call came, and she was told about a dance troupe that was looking for participants. Her parents were active Christians, and this was a Christian dance group that traveled and played all over the world. And she asked, "Can I do that?" And her mom said, "Naturally." And as she wrote to me when I interviewed her for my book was, "Dr. Laurie, as I danced across the floor, I grew up. It was my first taste of living independently, having to accommodate other people, other spaces, and learn about different cultures. And it was the most valuable first step I ever took." And I'm proud to say now, especially because of COVID, she's in the process of applying to college in the areas of nursing or education. So selecting a university, know the range of services they provide. Our services, for example, students on the spectrum, by peer support or mental health services. Find out how long it takes to get served. There's a lot of research out there talking about as these increased numbers of students having mental health issues at college, the amount of services they have or professionals they have on campus are not meeting those needs. How supportive are faculty and administrations to providing support and training to the faculty members? I've had meetings with deans and who say, "Laurie, that's really fascinating, but I have nothing to do with that." But taking a systems approach, they're very important, as well as presidents of the university. Do they have a special program within the school? And many parents I see want their child fully mainstreamed. But I want you to know all of these programs, if your child participated in one, would still be fully mainstreamed in the full academic range of classes they select. Lastly, talk to other parents of students with similar challenges, find out their experiences at different schools, and also benefits they found from participating in other programs before going to college and at college. In summary, I want you to assess your child's strengths and challenge areas and know that this is something to focus on, you being able to step back to see how they cope and manage those challenges. A diagnosis is critical for securing services. I don't call any of my clients by their diagnosis, but it is crucial for families also getting insurance and making sure they meet criteria to have an IEP, as well as getting services in universities or the workforce. Keep talking, texting, taking deep breaths, going for a walk outside with your friends. Communication is critical, and more so now than before, because they're going to be further away and you're going to have to learn to not call them every day or be worried if they don't call you back every day. Get to know resources with them, not separately. Identify them with them before they're needed. Additional support, what we found in research, is linked to success, not failure. Thank you again for having me. I'm sure there's going to be questions to answer and many things I didn't go in depth that can be answered fully in my book. It was a pleasure for being here. And I'm going to switch it back over to Michael, who I think has the questions.
That's right. Hi, Dr. Laurie, thank you. That was really, really helpful. And I encourage everybody to seek out the book, preferably take it out from the library. But I bet Dr. Laurie would also like to see us buy it on Amazon too. So we have two questions keyed up already. And I remind you that if you have a question, please throw it in the chat. Again, if you take your mouse, pull it down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, a menu will pop up, and the third icon, there you go. Dr. Laurie is showing us how to do it. I think the third icon in the middle. You don't see chat? Oh, yeah, so this happens.
On the other screen, so I'm going to go up to here.
All right.
Go to more.
So sometimes there's either a cheeseburger or 3 dots on the top right.
Okay.
Where was it for you?
3 dots.
3 dots. All right. So as an admin, it's at the bottom of my screen. As a participant, you should probably be able to find it going up to the top and go far to the right. There's 3 dots. Grab it and chat. And you know what? Since we only have 19 people on, I'll go through the first 2 questions and then I'll just open the mics in case it's too hard to find, because I gather there's a bunch of questions out there. So first question is, you mentioned IEP. Does an IEP and the obligation to respond to it transport to higher ed under federal and or state law, or does it just inform the institution's response?
It does not apply to colleges. They have their own system of evaluating. And the same thing is, it's not going to be applied for those. I've had clients looking for government jobs and they have their own assessment. The only thing it does for college, it's if you're beginning college, you can share that information, but it's no guarantee that you would qualify with disabilities because of that. What you can have is your current psychiatrist or psychologist who's write a letter for you, but they are going to go through the steps with you that you'll need to take, and it varies university to university.
Yep, so it's a whole new, it's starting over again.
Yes.
Second question
and the other
is, sorry, please continue, Dr. Laurie.
No, I just said the other advantage is that your fear that the IEP would hurt them, that doesn't happen. By having an IEP,
Also,
it helps you get better services, meaning the school will write something about your child that will help present directions of what they think is needed at the university. And it's totally up to you whether or not to share that information.
that's great. Second question that we have, it's about the search for college. How do you help shape the college search for a child that is or is diagnosed or maybe on the spectrum in terms of finding the right fit? You spoke about, I think it was Steve, and his dad happened to be 15 minutes away. So I think the question is about how do you balance what the student is looking for in terms of institution and what the parent wants in terms of, I'd like to be 15 minutes away.
Well, I think that again, I had children who went to school on the East Coast. I came from the Midwest and I went to the East Coast. So I think again, where they want to live, and some parents feel very strongly they want them close to them, which I understand now, is that first, I think it's important to look at what universities provide the type of services you think your child would benefit from. And in my book, I talk about 3 specific universities that have all different level of resources. It may be that they provide support with peers that they can talk to for advice. And that's often very helpful to have an older student. And at the Rochester Institute of Technology, what they found is what they wanted the most help with is about dating. And I know Stanford is asking the same. They're providing the same type of peer support. Depending if your child needs more academic support, then you want to see, are there special resources on campus for students on the spectrum, and to be able to get that type of support. And I think I also talk in my book about 3 different universities that you may want to look at that provide special services. And what that does is does not impact at all the classes they take, but it helps the students in self of getting organized, making sure they know their schedule, classes that they'll be going to, helping them understand what their requirements are, and communicating with their professors. So it provides multiple steps as well as support for other students on the spectrum. So each of these are at different levels of intensity, But what I want to make sure no one assumes just because they have mental health services or just because they have academic support, they will have experience of working with students on the autistic spectrum. And I've had clients at the top universities who could not find anybody at their campus with expertise in this area. So that's the type of question I would ask. Is there anybody in student mental health? Is there anybody, if it's a university setting that has a medical school close by, not an hour away, that has expertise that my child could go to if they needed help? Thanks.
All right, excellent answer. So we have a request, because you have become a rock star, that you could stop sharing your slides and then you'll go full screen.
Okay.
There you go.
All
All right, so what I'm going to do, those are the questions that were submitted versus chat. I'm going to unmute everybody. And what I'd say is, wait, hold on, how do I, that is not what I expected. Give me a sec. So I'm actually going to ask all of you to unmute yourselves. Apparently the mechanism. And let's just all put up our hands and probably talk over ourselves. But I imagine there's still more questions out there.
Andrea?
Oh.
Do you have a question?
No, I actually was just saying, never mind. Sorry.
Okay.
No question.
And I won't see all the names here, so that's what I'll need help.
I have a question.
Okay.
So even university provides services for these type of learners. Sometimes I feel these types of learners not willing to take these resources.
Right.
They refuse to take. They want to disclose their condition. Even they have amazing like resources like a buddy who can wake them up, who can help them homework. How to persuade them like to use these resources? My question.
That's really the challenge. Is I think the most is helping to prepare them ahead of time and helping them become aware of they use those then. And many of the students at colleges, and I'm working in a medical school setting right now, have those resources. But I think it's important for them. I understand they so much want to go to college with a clean sheet and not need that help. But as in my case, in the book, we talk about kids who crashed or kids who were not following up on their homework assignments, and even had teachers who called them and said they need more support. And some of them could listen. I won't take a tutor, refused a tutor, but could, in a very academic challenging school, they reduce their course load. And colleges can work with students like that, but again, they have to be willing to do it. And we, as parents, we all wish we had that magic wand and say, this is what's best for you. But I don't think such a wand exists.
What are you listening to?
Autism in college.
Autism in college?
What's going on? It's background.
Okay, any other, who else we got? Questions?
If I can just your child not wanting to get support themselves or wanting to take that first step, sometimes a roommate or a teacher, you know, if you reach out to a professor that they know that they have a connection with, they can help your child take that initial first step if they're not willing to do it on their own.
Yeah, it's a fine line, and I have had students, especially those with ADHD, who at a very demanding university gave permission right away that they could contact their parents. Mm-hmm. And so the school did contact and said, yes, he was honor student, but he's not keeping up here. And then they could talk with him about what help he needed. I spoke with him, and what he decided is that he would take extended time on his tests. He would reduce his course load, but he refused a tutor and he refused mental health support. So,
it is a fine line.
Yes. And many schools will say they can't talk to you without their consent.
Right, right.
Okay, sure.
Okay, floor's open. Any other questions out there?
Yes.
iPad for Brenda.
Yes. What would make you recommend that the child not go to college?
Well, I think it's seeing how prepared they are right now, and depending on how old they are, how much are they able to handle those things we went over about getting their work and their schedules and managing those type of things. And there are therapeutic programs that will help them during that time period. If it's more mental health reasons, they're feeling too down, I'm scared to go there, then I would focus more on getting mental health services for them. Many parents feel that it's helpful to apply early if you can, but it's not going to work if you have a teen that's very depressed, they're not motivated to apply early, and then come back later. But we have seen students coming back later and later, and I think it's better for them to begin this process when they're feeling grounded, better mental health, and feel more equipped to do that. And I think it's helpful for them not just to be staying at home in that way, but finding some type of program that encourages working collaboratively and also has mental health staff on board. And there are internship programs that provide that.
Thank you.
What are colleges thinking about older students, though? Are colleges, I guess I'm worrying about the admission process when a 20-year-old or a later, is applying to be a freshman because they've taken.
It depends on the flexibility of the school, how large it is. All of this always applies to how many people they have applying and how many openings they have. But I think you'll find some small schools that are more flexible and are attentive to that. And on my book, I list many sites that you can look at that provide that kind of information. And you can Google it also, what schools are more open for students applying later. And I know many of the high-powered Ivy League schools that now have a policy of someone applies, but they don't have an opening. They encourage them to take a year off to do work, to travel, do something else, and apply again the following year. And I've had clients go through that experience. And also there's
yeah, I'm actually, oh, please, Dr. Laurie, continue.
No, I said there's also community colleges where they can go part-time and also get more time for mental health or have some work experience, which may help empower them for that transition. And many community colleges have fabulous programs. And the ones in university, in the Bay Area, all have feeding programs to University of California universities. So depending where you live, see at the community college and do they provide that opportunity? And then that reduces stress for everybody.
You just totally said what I was going to say. Yep. So I happen to be
in your face, right?
I happen to work in the higher ed tech space. And number one, dead right, community colleges, Delco used to do it with Drexel and Penn State. I think they've reduced it to just Penn State. Montco does have transfer programs in place with Penn State and other institutions, both public and private, where you get, your student can do the first 2 years, do the basics, all the credits transfer, and they finish 4 years with a degree from the 4-year institution, not the 2-year institution. So that's absolutely correct. And then the other thing is that right now is a great time to be a non-traditional student for the next, for this year, next year, and probably the third, 3 years. All institutions are struggling to hit enrollment goals. Anecdotally, George Washington University is down 24% year over year, and they are not alone. So I guarantee you that 20-year-old that applies, next year, and the institution is down 15 to 20%, they're going to look at them. And I think, Dr. Laurie, you're absolutely right. Maximize the value of that year with some sort of internship, volunteer program, something that is like, I didn't just like spend a year in my parents' basement, as you said, but here's what I did with that year.
And
The gap year can definitely drive value.
But
Go ahead.
my second part of that question is the social emotional portion of that, where I'm a 20-year-old coming onto campus as a freshman maybe, with a lot of 18-year-olds and like rooming situation. I guess I'm trying to figure out how that all works as a parent.
Every university is trying to figure that out right now, because many of the colleges initially were going to let just freshmen and seniors come.
Right.
And then because we all know how valuable that orientation is, and getting to know who a roommate is or who your teachers are, and then send them home in November. But for example, Stanford just said nobody is coming. Harvard was taking the freshmen and taking seniors that have to be tested 3 times a day, a week. So I think they're juggling with trying to figure out how to do that. But say they had to take their freshman year at home, they're already going to be behind in making friends.
Yeah.
So again, many of the students who are at college right now are in that experience right now. And I get many calls from parents, what do I do? I've got my freshman at home. And they don't want to be following the rules at home, especially if they've had a week or 2 at college. And those many universities now are having the freshmen there till November and not taking sophomores and not taking juniors. And I know of other universities that are taking just juniors and seniors. So you can imagine the emotional letdown, that excitement. I just got into college and I'm at home.
And I understand. I'm just worried about how that we put a kid who's maybe older in age and maybe not maturity, but with like how they fit in. And so that's my
concern. Who your roommate is not necessarily who your best friend is, and they will find activities that they connect with or clubs that they join, and I think they'll find much more wider range, just like we're seeing in medicine. I'm doing interviews for Stanford Medical School, and we're getting kids a much wider range of ages than ever before. Same thing, law school's one of the schools that people start later. So I think, again, it's not just like accepting and what's going on. It's not one clear path right now. Because we've all gotten COVID coming in, and it's changed many of those paths we thought that everyone would be going on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anyone else out there? All right, going once, going twice.
I would just like to say
I know that voice.
Laurie was one of my college roommates at Tufts, and this has, the whole time we were in college, she was passionate and worked with Dr. Barry Brazelton, and we all knew that she was going to make the most marvelous clinical psychologist, and it's just wonderful to hear, and I learned so much from you. I'm just so glad you were able to present tonight.
And you educate me a great deal too. So thank you for having me. And I think you know how to contact and where my book is accessible at your library, as well as on Amazon. And I hope it gives you a great deal of resources for alternatives, as well as universities that are trained and have special programs that might better meet your kids' needs.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. On behalf of the Bala Cynwyd Library, Dr. Laurie, for Autumn, Andrea, Janet, and everyone that participated this evening, we thank you very much. You donated your time and your wisdom, and you also agreed that we could record this. So this will eventually be posted and available for everyone who participated or didn't show up to partake of your wisdom. So thank you very much. We do appreciate your gift to this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. Great job.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Night.